being afraid isn't a bad thing. We're taught early that fear is something to overcome, something to silence, something that proves weakness. Be brave, be fearless, don't be scared. But psychology and lived experience tell a very different story. Being afraid isn't a bad thing. In many cases, it's the reason you're still here. Fear isn't the opposite of courage. It's the condition that makes courage meaningful. Cassia Leo once wrote, "Being afraid isn't such a bad thing, because fear is a reminder that you still have something to lose, something worth holding on to." Fear doesn't show up randomly. It appears where attachment exists, where value exists, where something matters enough to be protected. You're not afraid of nothing. You're afraid because something is important. Fear is information, not failure. From a psychological perspective, fear is one of the brain's oldest tools. Long before language, logic, or ambition, fear existed to keep us alive. Fear doesn't always mean danger. It means awareness. Modern psychology explains that fear is often a signal, not a verdict. It tells you, pay attention, slow down, prepare, adjust. Fear is the mind asking questions before the world forces answers. The problem isn't fear itself. The problem is when we treat fear as an enemy instead of a guide. Why fear feels so personal? Fear often feels intimate, embarrassing, like proof that you're not strong enough. But fear usually points to the exact place where growth is happening. You don't fear things you don't care about. You fear losing people you love, failing at things that define you, making the wrong decision when the stakes are real. Fear reveals your values more clearly than confidence ever could. Confidence says, "I'll be fine." Fear says, "This matters." Fear doesn't mean you're weak. In Frieren, Beyond Journey's End, Eisen says, "Being afraid isn't a bad thing. It is my fear that has brought me this far." That line hits because it reframes fear as experience, not hesitation. Eisen isn't afraid because he's inexperienced. He's afraid because he's lived long enough to understand consequences. Fear taught him when to be cautious, when to retreat, when preparation matters more than pride. This is something psychology confirms. People with experience don't become fearless. They become precise. Fear sharpens judgment when ego would get you killed. The difference between fear and panic. Not all fear is the same. Healthy fear is grounded. It helps you assess reality. Unhealthy fear spirals. It turns imagined futures into certainty. Fear becomes a problem only when it stops you from living, when it convinces you danger is everywhere, when it replaces caution with paralysis. But fear that asks questions, fear that slows you down, fear that makes you think twice, that fear is protective. Fear as emotional intelligence. People who understand their fear tend to make fewer reckless decisions, prepare more thoroughly, respect boundaries, take risks more intentionally. Fear becomes emotional intelligence when you listen without obeying blindly. You don't need to eliminate fear. You need to understand it. Fear says, be careful. Wisdom decides what to do next. Why we shame fear. Society praises boldness and speed. Fear slows things down. But speed isn't always strength, and boldness without awareness is just impulsivity wearing confidence. We shame fear because it reminds us of vulnerability, and vulnerability makes people uncomfortable. But vulnerability is where honesty lives. Fear means you're still human. If you feel afraid, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you still care. You still want something. You still have something to lose. Fear fades only when nothing matters anymore. And that's not strength, that's numbness. A different way to see fear. Instead of asking, why am I so afraid? Try asking, what is this fear trying to protect? Fear isn't there to stop your life. It's there to help you live it without destroying what matters. Final thought. Being afraid isn't a flaw. It's evidence of attachment, meaning, and awareness. Fear doesn't disqualify you from courage. It qualifies you for it.
And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not pretending you're fearless, but moving forward while listening to what fear is trying to teach you.